I'm Alice, 34, female, and on my last birthday, my family taught me a lesson I'll never forget. My presence is optional, but my presents are mandatory. The silence in my dining room was a physical presence. It was 6:45 p.m. and the table set for 3 felt like a monument to a foolish hope. The scent of roasted chicken, my favorite, hung in the air, mingling with the rosemary and garlic I'd so carefully prepared. A bottle of good wine, one I'd been saving, was breathing on the counter. Everything was perfect except for the two empty chairs that gaped at me like silent accusers. I had turned 34 today. The invitation I'd sent to my mother, Helen, and my younger sister, Chloe, a week ago was painstakingly simple. I'd texted them, "Hi, birthday dinner at my place next Tuesday to celebrate the big 3-4. Dinner starts at 6. No gifts, just presents." I had even added a smiley face. The request felt so pure, so simple. After years of feeling like the family ATM, I just wanted them. I wanted their time, their laughter, their company. I wanted to feel, just for one night, like a daughter and a sister, not a financial plan. Their replies had been enthusiastic. "Mom, of course, sweetie, wouldn't miss it for the world." Chloe, "Yes, can't wait, so proud of my old lady sister." But 6 p.m. had come and gone. Then 6:15, at 6:30, a familiar cold knot began to tighten in my stomach. It was a feeling I knew well, a unique blend of disappointment and self-recrimination for daring to expect anything different. This wasn't the first time. The landscape of my relationship with my family was littered with these small, abandoned monuments of my hope. I sank into one of the chairs, the polished wood cold against my legs, and thought back. It was never one big dramatic event. It was a slow erosion, a death by 1,000 cuts. I remembered Chloe's 25th birthday 5 years ago. She had this grand idea to start a bespoke jewelry business on Etsy. She had the passion she claimed, but not the capital. I, having just sold my first piece of software for a life-changing amount of money, was flush with success and generosity. I wrote her a check for $10,000, not as a loan but as a gift. "To invest in your dream," the card read. The thank you was brief, a text. A week later, she called, not to update me on her business plan, but to complain. "You know," she'd said, her voice laced with an audacious sort of whine, "if you'd given me 20,000, I could have gotten the premium materials. It's just so hard to start small." The Etsy shop never materialized. The money vanished into a new wardrobe, a lavish trip with her friends, and a down payment on a car I knew she couldn't afford the payments for. When I gently asked about it, she'd scoffed. "Oh, that? It was too creatively stifling, you wouldn't get it." I never saw a single piece of jewelry, and my investment in her dream became just another transaction she took for granted. Then there was Mom. After my father passed away, she was left in a difficult financial situation. I stepped in without a second thought. I paid off the remaining mortgage on her house, ensuring she would never have to worry about a roof over her head. I set up her utilities on auto pay from my own account. My career as a tech entrepreneur was taking off, and I was more than happy to provide for her, to give her the peace of mind she deserved. The first year she was grateful, calling me her guardian angel. But the gratitude slowly curdled into expectation. 2 years ago, my new company landed a massive, industry-changing contract. It was the culmination of years of sleepless nights and relentless work. I was featured in a major business magazine. I was ecstatic and invited Mom and Chloe to a celebratory dinner at the fanciest restaurant in the city. I wanted to share my biggest professional triumph with them. An hour before we were supposed to meet, Mom called. "Alice, sweetie, I have a terrible headache. I just can't make it tonight. I'm so proud of you, though." Disappointed but understanding, I canceled the reservation. The next day, a friend sent me a photo from her social media feed. It was a picture of my mother and Chloe, arms laden with shopping bags, laughing in front of a department store. The timestamp was from the exact time of our canceled dinner. When I confronted her, her voice was smooth, dismissive. "Oh, that?" Chloe insisted. She said some retail therapy was just what I needed for my headache. You know how she is. The excuses were always plausible, always designed to make me feel unreasonable for questioning them. To simplify things and honestly to save myself the constant, draining conversations about money, I created the foundation account. It was a straightforward trust account. Every month, a significant sum was automatically transferred into it from my main business account. From this foundation account, Mom's mortgage and bills were paid, and Chloe received a generous monthly allowance that covered her rent, her car, and her lifestyle. They were both authorized users, free to manage their expenses without ever having to ask me for a dime. I thought it was the perfect solution. It provided for them, gave them autonomy, and insulated me from the endless entitled requests. I see now that all it did was make me invisible. It automated my role as their benefactor so completely that they forgot the person behind the money even existed. My phone buzzed on the table, jolting me back to the silent, lonely dining room. 6:45 p.m. It was a text, not an apology, not an on my way, but something far worse. It was a text that confirmed the cold knot in my stomach wasn't paranoia, it was intuition. The screen of my phone cast a pale, clinical light onto the polished wood of the dining table. The message was from Chloe. Each word felt like a tiny, deliberate prick to my heart. Hey, so sorry, something came up. It's just too far to drive for just a birthday, you know? The traffic is awful. Let's do something this weekend. Just a birthday. My thumbs hovered over the keyboard. I typed and deleted a dozen replies. I cooked for hours. Too needy, you promised. Too accusatory, I'm really hurt. Too vulnerable, in the end, I typed nothing. The three dots that indicated she was typing again appeared and then vanished. She had said her piece. My feelings weren't part of the equation. I stared at the words, too far to drive. Chloe lived 25 minutes away. On a Tuesday evening with rush hour long over, the drive would be smooth and easy. It was an excuse so flimsy it was insulting. It was a lie that didn't even bother to be convincing. She didn't care enough to craft a believable fiction. My phone buzzed again. This time it was my mother, Helen. Her message was softer, wrapped in the familiar guise of maternal concern, but the core of it was the same. Hi, sweetie. So sorry about tonight. I'm just completely exhausted from the week and my back is acting up again. I don't think I should be out late. Maybe we can do a nice brunch next weekend instead. I'll even treat. The offer to treat was almost comical. With what money? The money I deposited into the foundation account every month, the gesture was so hollow it echoed, exhausted from what she was retired. Her biggest stressor was deciding which television drama to watch. And next weekend was the eternal promise, the carrot dangled just out of reach that kept me hoping, kept me quiet. It was a placeholder for an obligation they never intended to fulfill. I pushed my chair back, the legs scraping against the hardwood floor with a sound that felt unnervously loud in the crushing silence. I walked into the kitchen, the aroma of the cooling dinner now feeling cloying, almost sickening. I looked at the three plates I had laid out, the perfectly roasted chicken, the creamy mashed potatoes, the vibrant green beans almondine. It was a meal born of love and effort, and it was going to be eaten alone. I took one plate, served myself a small portion of everything, and returned to the dining room. I sat in my designated seat, the two empty ones flanking me like ghosts of the family I wished I had. I ate in silence, each bite a mechanical motion. The food was delicious, technically. My objective culinary assessment was that I had done a great job, but it tasted like ash in my mouth. It tasted of loneliness. With a strange sense of ceremony, I found a single candle, one left over from a previous, less solitary celebration. I stuck it into a small cupcake I'd bought for dessert and lit the wick. The tiny flame flickered, casting dancing shadows on the walls. I sat there watching it burn, the only light in the room besides the cold glow of my phone. What was I celebrating? 34 years of life, a successful career built from nothing, a beautiful home I'd earned, financial independence that allowed me to be extraordinarily generous. By any external measure, my life was a success, but in that moment, all I felt was a profound, cavernous emptiness. The one thing my money couldn't buy was the one thing I craved, to be seen, to be valued for who I was, not what I could provide. The thought, once it formed, was sharp and clarifying. For years, I had operated under the delusion that my generosity was an act of love that would eventually beget love in return. I thought that by making their lives easier, I was fostering a closer bond. But I wasn't, I was enabling them. I had taught them that my resources were infinite and my feelings were irrelevant. I had paid them to ignore me. I blew out the candle, the wisp of smoke curled upwards and dissipated into the darkness. And in that darkness, a new feeling began to bloom alongside the hurt. It was colder, harder, and far more resolute. It was the feeling of a final straw being placed upon a camel's already broken back. The hurt was a fog, but this new feeling. NG was a beacon. It wasn't anger, not yet. It was a quiet, chilling clarity. They thought it was just a birthday. I would show them what just a transaction felt like. The transition from hurt to resolve wasn't a storm, it was a quiet dawn. As I sat in the darkened dining room, the remnants of my solitary birthday meal before me, the emotional fog of disappointment began to recede, replaced by the stark, clear light of understanding. My mother and sister hadn't just forgotten my birthday. They hadn't just been thoughtless. They had made a conscious calculation that my feelings were less important than their convenience. I cleaned the kitchen with a slow, deliberate calmness that felt foreign. I scraped the food from their untouched plates into the trash, the sound of the silverware clattering seeming to punctuate the end of an era. I washed the dishes, scrubbing away the evidence of my futile efforts. With each clean plate I stacked, I felt a layer of my own naivety being scrubbed away too. When the kitchen was spotless, I walked into my home office. It was my sanctuary, the place where I had built my empire line by line of code. The large monitor on my desk was dark, but its reflection showed my face pale and determined. This was where I was powerful. This was where I was in control. In every other aspect of my life, I had commanded respect through competence and hard work. It was only with my family that I had allowed myself to be a doormat. My mind turned to the foundation account. I had created it with such optimistic intentions. It was supposed to be a tool of empowerment for them and a boundary for me. I had envisioned it as a mature, modern way to handle family finances, removing the awkwardness of them having to ask for help. I'd hired a financial advisor to set it up, to make it ironclad and efficient. It was a testament to my problem-solving nature. If a system is inefficient, like the endless, guilt-laden cycle of requests and payments, you build a better one. But I had made a critical error in my calculations. I had designed a system for rational actors, for people who would appreciate the gesture and respect the intent. I hadn't accounted for the corrosive nature of entitlement. The foundation account hadn't created a boundary, it had created a blind. It had hidden me, the provider, so effectively that they had forgotten I was there at all. They saw the account as a magical, self-refilling wellspring, not the product of my labor, my stress, and my sacrifice. With a deep breath, I sat down in my leather office chair. The familiar squeak was comforting. I woke the computer from its sleep, the screen flooding the dark room with light. My fingers flew across the keyboard, typing in the web address for the private bank that managed the trust. The login page appeared, asking for my credentials and a two-factor authentication code from my phone, security. I had built layers of it to protect the money, but I had built none to protect my own heart. I logged in, the dashboard loaded, displaying the account's balance, a number that would be staggering to most people. It showed the recent activity, the automatic mortgage payment for Mom's house, the transfer of Chloe's monthly allowance just last week, a few utility bills. It was a neat, orderly ledger of my family's dependents. I navigated to the account management section, then to authorized users. There they were, their names listed below mine: Helen Miller, Chloe Miller. Beside each name was a set of permissions I had carefully curated for them, and next to that, a small, unassuming button: Remove User. My hand trembled slightly as I moved the mouse cursor over my mother's name. A picture of her from a happier time flashed through my mind, her smiling at my college graduation, her pride so palpable it felt like a physical embrace. Where had that woman gone? Had I, by trying to give her everything, somehow taken away the part of her that saw me as a daughter? I clicked the button, a confirmation box popped up. Are you sure you want to remove Helen Miller as an authorized user? This action is immediate and will revoke all access privileges. My finger hovered over the confirm button. This was it. This was the point of no return. I wasn't just cutting off funds, I was severing a cord, a toxic, one-way umbilical cord that had nourished them while draining me. I clicked confirm. Her name vanished from the list. I turned to Chloe's name next. This was easier. The sting of her text, just a birthday, was still fresh. I remembered her careless dismissal of my $10,000 gift, her entitled complaints, her complete lack of ambition fueled by the knowledge that I would always be there to catch her. I clicked Remove User. I confirmed without hesitation. Now the list of authorized users showed only one name: Alice Miller, Mind. My work wasn't done. I opened my email client, the stark white of a new message window staring back at Me, I created a group email addressing it to both of them. My fingers rested on the keyboard. What to say? A long, emotional explanation of my hurt, a furious tirade, an itemized list of their transgressions. No, that would invite argument. It would give them an opening to gaslight me, to twist my words, to make this about my oversensitivity rather than their actions. They didn't deserve an explanation. Their actions were explanation enough. Clarity required brevity. Power required silence. I typed a single sentence. To Helen Miller, Chloe Miller. From Alice Miller. Subject Foundation account. As of today, I pause all support. No salutation, no closing, just a cold, hard statement of fact. My heart was pounding, a frantic drum against my ribs. This wasn't a move made in anger, it was an act of survival. I read the sentence one last time, took a breath, and clicked send. The email vanished into the digital ether. The deed was done. A profound, terrifying, and exhilarating silence filled the room. It was the silence of a long-closed door finally being opened, letting in a shocking, bracing gust of fresh air. After sending the email, I shut down my computer. I didn't want to see their replies. I didn't want to engage in the inevitable storm of texts and calls. For the first time in a long time, I wanted to grant myself the gift of peace. I went to my bedroom, changed into my pajamas, and climbed into bed. It was only 9:00 p.m. The house was unnaturally quiet. There was no television murmuring from the living room, no sound of anyone else's movements, just the low hum of the refrigerator and the gentle ticking of the clock on my nightstand. The silence I had craved felt different now, not lonely, but sovereign. It was a space that was entirely mine. I picked up a novel I'd been meaning to read for months, but the words swam before my eyes. My mind was a maelstrom of what-ifs. What would they do? How would they react? Part of me, the part conditioned by years of caregiving, felt a pang of guilt, a flicker of worry for them. The other, newer part of me, the part that had sent the email, stood firm. This was necessary. This was the consequence of their own actions. I must have drifted off because I was startled awake by the insistent buzzing of my phone on the nightstand. The screen lit up the dark room. It was 10:17 p.m., a text from Chloe. What is this? What does pause all support mean? Is this a joke? The three question marks screamed with a sense of indignant confusion. I watched the screen, my heart starting to beat a little faster. Another text came through a minute later. I tried to pay for gas and my card was declined. My card, Alice, this is embarrassing, fix it. Fix it, the classic command. I was not a person, I was a system that was malfunctioning. I ignored the message. A moment later, a text from my mother. Alice, please call me immediately. Chloe is very upset. There must be some kind of mistake with the bank. I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? It was always a misunderstanding, a mistake, never their fault. The familiar narrative was already taking shape. I put my phone on silent, turning the screen over so I wouldn't see it light up. But I could still feel the vibrations. A call from Chloe, I let it go to voicemail. Another call immediately after, ignored, then another and another. It became a frantic, rhythmic pattern. The phone would vibrate for 20 seconds, stop, and then start again almost instantly. She was not leaving a message, she was just hitting redial with furious repetition. I counted the vibrations. 8, 9, 10, she was panicking. The magical wellspring had run dry, and she didn't know how to prime the pump. On the 12th call, the vibrations stopped. A few minutes of blessed silence followed. I closed my eyes, trying to find that feeling of sovereign peace again. Maybe they had gotten the message. Maybe they were finally realizing that I was serious. Then, just as the clock on my nightstand ticked over to midnight, heralding the official end of my 34th birthday, my phone lit up one more time. It wasn't a call or a text. It was a different kind of alert, one with a small, colorful icon I knew well. A push notification from Instagram. My breath caught in my throat. I rarely used the app myself, but I followed a few friends and, of course, my sister. Chloe lived her life on Instagram, curating a perfect-looking existence funded by my hard work. My first instinct was to ignore it. What could it possibly be? A passive-aggressive meme about ungrateful family members? A dramatic quote about being wronged? But curiosity is a powerful force. The notification contained a short, infuriatingly casual line of text that made my blood run cold. Chloe Miller tagged you in a photo. Why would she tag me now in the middle of this? Was it a picture from a past, happier time? A desperate, manipulative attempt to remind me of the odd old days that never really were? My finger trembled as I reached for the phone. Something told me this wasn't an olive branch, it was something else entirely. And the title of the notification, combined with the timing, whispered a chilling premonition into my soul. This will change everything. This was the piece of the puzzle I didn't even know was missing. With a sense of dread and grim certainty, I unlocked my phone and opened the app. The Instagram app opened to its home feed, but the notification banner was still at the top of the screen. I tapped it, and it took me directly to the photo. My screen was filled with the smiling faces of my mother and sister. The image was slick, perfectly framed, and bathed in the warm, flattering light of an expensive restaurant. Chloe was holding her phone up for the selfie, her head tilted at that practiced angle that she knew made her look her best. She had a wide, triumphant smile on her face, a glass of rosé held delicately in her other hand. My mother, Helen, was leaning in beside her, her own glass of white wine raised as if in a toast. She looked radiant, happy, and utterly relaxed. There was no sign of the debilitating exhaustion she'd claimed, no hint of the back pain that had supposedly kept her homebound. They were beautiful, they were happy, and they were liars. My eyes scanned the background. I recognized it instantly. It was La Belleville, a trendy, upscale French bistro that had opened a few months ago. It was famous for its exquisite food, its long waiting list, and its astronomical prices. I recognized it because I had mentioned it to them just a month prior. We should all go there for a special occasion sometime, I'd said. Apparently, my birthday didn't qualify. My gaze flickered to the caption Chloe had written beneath the photo. It was crafted with the breezy, hashtag-laden carelessness that defined her online persona. A much-needed girls' night out, sometimes you have to treat yourself. Winking face girls' night making memories treat yourself best mom. And then I saw it, the final damning piece of evidence. At the very end of her string of hashtags, there it was, at Alice Miller, my handle. She had tagged me. It wasn't a mistake. It was a message, a taunt, a flex. It was a way of saying, look at us. Look what we're doing without you. Look how much fun we're having. But the most gut-wrenching detail of all was the timestamp, displayed in small gray letters just below her name, 7:30 p.m. 30 minutes after she had texted me that it was too far to drive for just a birthday. 15 minutes after my mother had claimed she was too exhausted to leave the house. While I was sitting alone in my dining room, staring at the empty chairs, they were here. They were ordering appetizers, sipping wine, and laughing. They hadn't just bylaid on me, they had replaced me. They had taken the money I provided for their living expenses and used it to fund a lavish evening out, an evening they chose over celebrating my existence. A wave of something that felt like nausea washed over me. The hurt I'd felt earlier was a dull ache. This was a sharp, surgical incision. The betrayal was so blatant, so audacious, it was almost surreal. They hadn't even tried to be subtle. The tag was the most confusing, most infuriating part. Why tag me? Did she want me to see it? Was it a poorly thought-out attempt to include me? Or was it, as a darker part of my mind suspected, a power play? A way to rub my nose in the fact that their world, a world I paid for, revolved around them, and I was merely a remote spectator. The push notification that had lit up my phone at midnight hadn't just been an alert, it was an illumination. It changed my next move entirely because it clarified their motive. This wasn't neglect, this was contempt. My decision to pause their support made just a few hours ago now felt insufficient. A pause implies a future resumption. A pause is a warning shot, but what I was looking at on my screen wasn't a mistake that warranted a warning. It was a declaration of war on our relationship. They had made their priorities crystal clear. They didn't just want my money, they wanted my money without the inconvenient attachment of me. I took a screenshot of the post. I saved it to my camera roll, a cold, hard piece of evidence. The 12 missed calls from Chloe now made perfect sense. Her panic wasn't just about her gas card being declined. It was the terror of someone whose entire fabricated reality was about to come crashing down. She had been treating herself on my dime, and the party had just come to an abrupt, screeching halt. I turned my phone off completely. Not on silent, off. The darkness that filled the screen felt absolute. The rage I expected to feel wasn't there. Instead, there was a profound, icy calm. The kind of calm that comes after the storm has passed, revealing the wreckage in stark, undeniable detail. The questions were gone. The self-doubt was gone. All that remained was the truth, captured in a single, smiling, perfectly filtered photograph. They hadn't just skipped my birthday, they had celebrated my irrelevance. And my next move would not be a pause, it would be a full, complete, and permanent stop. I slept surprisingly well. It was the dreamless, heavy sleep of the emotionally exhausted, the kind that comes after a fever breaks. When I woke, the sun was streaming through my window, and for the first time in as long as I could remember, my first thought wasn't a vague, anxious worry about my family. It was simply, what will I have for breakfast? I made coffee, scrambled some eggs, and sat at my kitchen island scrolling through the news on my tablet. I did not turn on my phone, I let them stew in the silence I had created. The panic I knew would be growing, the declined cards, the unanswered calls, the single cryptic email, it would be a cocktail of confusion and fear for them. Good. Let them feel for a moment the uncertainty that had been my constant companion for years. Around 11 a.m., I decided I was ready. I turned my phone back on. It exploded. A flood of notifications poured in, dozens of missed calls from both my mother and Chloe, and a torrent of text messages, each more frantic than the last. Chloe, Alice, turn your phone on, this isn't funny. Chloe, my rent is due tomorrow, what am I supposed to do? Chloe, you are ruining my life. Mom, Alice, sweetheart, we are all worried sick. Please just tell us what's wrong. Mom, this is not the way to handle things. You are upsetting your sister and you are giving me a heart attack. Mom, I am your mother. You owe me an explanation. You owe me, there it was, the foundational belief of our entire relationship. I ignored the texts. I knew a one-on-one conversation would allow them to triangulate to play me off each other. I initiated a group conference call. I was setting the terms of this engagement. They both answered on the first ring. Alice, Chloe's voice was shrill, a mix of relief and fury. Finally, what is going on? You can't just cut me off. I have bills to pay. Do you have any idea how humiliating it was? Alice, thank goodness. My mother's voice was smoother, coated in a layer of feigned concern. We were so worried. Is everything all right? Did something happen? I let the silence hang in the air for a moment before I spoke, my voice even and devoid of the emotion that was churning inside me. I'm fine, Mom, and yes, something did happen. You both missed my birthday. It was Chloe who scoffed first. Oh my God, is that what this is about? Your birthday? We said we were sorry. We said we'd do it next weekend. You're going to ruin my financial stability over a stupid dinner. It wasn't a stupid dinner to me, I said calmly. It was the one thing I asked for, not money, not a gift, just your time. I told you I was exhausted, my mother cut in, her voice taking on a martyred tone. A good daughter would understand that her mother needs to rest. You're being incredibly selfish, Alice, to punish us like this. And I was busy, Chloe added, her voice rising. Things come up, life happens, you're acting like a child. I had expected this, the gaslighting, the guilt-tripping, the immediate reversal of blame. It was their standard operating procedure. I let them vent, their accusations washing over me. They were building a case for my irrationality, for my over-the-top reaction to a minor slight. They were painting me as the villain. When they finally paused to take a breath, I spoke again, my voice still quiet, still calm. I hope you both enjoyed your dinner at La Belleville last night. Dead silence. The sudden, absolute quiet on the other end of the line was more damning than any confession. I could practically hear the gears turning in their heads, the frantic search for a new lie, a new narrative. It was my mother who broke the silence, her voice sputtering. I don't know what you're talking about. A friend of ours felt so bad that we were stuck at home. Chloe jumped in, her voice suddenly high and fast. She insisted on treating us to cheer us up. It was a last-minute thing, we were going to tell you. A breathtakingly audacious lie constructed on the fly. They were good, I had to give them that. Really? I said, my voice still level. A friend treated you? That's generous. Because on Instagram, the caption said you were treating yourselves. I just assumed you were, since you were celebrating your much-needed girls' night out using the monthly allowance from the account I refilled 2 days before my birthday. Another beat of stunned silence. I could picture their faces, the blood draining from them. I don't know what you're looking at, Chloe began, but her voice faltered. Let me help you remember, I said, and with that I sent the screenshot to our group text chat. The little swoosh sound echoed in the silence of the car. I knew the image would be displayed on their screens now. Their smiling, happy faces, the wine glasses, the caption, the timestamp, the irrefutable proof of their lie. The tag was a nice touch, Chloe, I continued, a new hard edge to my voice. Tagging me in the photo, it really made me feel like I was a part of the celebration. It helped me understand exactly where I stand. Alice, my mother's voice was a whisper now, all the fight gone out of it. It wasn't like that. Wasn't it? I asked. You told me you were exhausted and in pain. Chloe told me it was too far to drive, but you were both perfectly capable of getting dressed up, driving across town, and enjoying a $300 dinner. The only thing you were too tired or too busy for was me. I took a deep breath. This was the moment. The foundation account was my mistake. I thought it would make things easier, but it just made me invisible. It allowed you to see me as a resource, not a person, and I will not be a resource anymore. The pause is no longer a pause. It is a stop, a permanent one. You can't do that, Chloe shrieked. The house, my apartment. Your mother owns her house, the mortgage is paid, I said flatly. She will have to learn to budget for her own taxes and utilities like every other retiree. And you, Chloe, are a healthy 29-year-old woman. It is time for you to get a full-time job and support yourself. This is not a punishment. It is the natural consequence of your actions. You wanted a life without me in it. Now you have one. I didn't wait for a reply. I didn't want to hear the pleading, the crying, the inevitable angry threats. I had said my piece. I had laid out the truth. My verdict was delivered. Goodbye, I said, and I ended the calls. The days following the confrontation were a strange mix of turmoil and tranquility. My phone, which I now kept on silent most of the time, became a vessel for their desperate attempts to claw back the life they had lost. They tried every tactic in their playbook. First came the anger. Chloe sent a barrage of vitriolic texts calling me every name she could think of. She accused me of being a cold, heartless monster who enjoyed watching them suffer. My mother took a different approach, attempting to weaponize guilt. She sent long, rambling emails about her health, her stress, her fear for the future, all of it implicitly my fault. When anger and guilt failed, they turned to enlistment. They called my aunts, my uncles, my cousins, feeding them a carefully edited version of the story where I, the wealthy and ungrateful daughter, had inexplicably and cruelly cut off my poor, struggling family. A few relatives called me, urging me to be the bigger person and forgive and forget. I politely explained that this was a private matter and that they only had one side of the story. To my relief, most of them who had witnessed the family dynamic for years quickly backed off. Through it all, I held firm. For the first time, I felt an unshakable sense of rightness in my actions. The screenshot of their smiling faces at La Belle Vie was my shield. Whenever I felt a pang of doubt or a flicker of old guilt, I would look at it. It was my anchor to the truth. It reminded me that this wasn't about a forgotten birthday. It was about a fundamental lack of respect that had defined my entire life. To help me navigate the emotional fallout, I did something I should have done years ago. I found a therapist. In our first session, as I recounted the story, I felt a lifetime of resentment and hurt pouring out of me. My therapist, a kind and insightful woman, listened patiently. When I was done, she said something that resonated deeply. Alice, you didn't take something away from them. You simply stopped giving them something that was yours. You are reclaiming your own resources, your money, your time, and your emotional energy. Reclaiming, that word became my mantra. I started reclaiming my life in small ways at first. I took the substantial amount of money that had been flowing into the foundation account each month and opened a new investment account. I named it the Alice Fund. Its sole purpose was to fund my own dreams, my own comfort, my own joy. The first thing I did was book a trip. A 3-week solo journey through Italy, something I had always dreamed of but had always put off because mom didn't like to fly or Chloe couldn't possibly manage without me nearby in case of an emergency. I flew first class, I stayed in beautiful boutique hotels, I ate gelato at noon and drank wine with every dinner. I explored ancient ruins and sat in sun-drenched piazzas reading for hours. In Florence, standing alone in front of Botticelli's The Birth of Venus, I was overcome with emotion. I was witnessing one of the world's great masterpieces, and my first instinct wasn't to take a picture to send to my family to prove I was having a good time. It was just to experience it, for me. For the first time, my experiences felt entirely my own. I felt a profound sense of peace, of lightness. I was no longer performing for an unappreciative audience. I was simply living. When I returned home, tanned and happy, I found a letter waiting for me. It was from my mother. Her handwriting was shaky. It wasn't angry or manipulative. It was short, and to my astonishment, it contained two words I had never heard from her in this context before: I'm sorry. She wrote that losing the financial support was hard, but losing me was harder. She said that seeing the Instagram photo had, after the initial shock and denial, forced her to see her own behavior clearly. She didn't ask for money. She didn't ask for me to change my mind. She just asked if one day I might be willing to have a cup of coffee with her. Chloe has not reached out. I've heard through the grapevine that she had to move into a smaller apartment with two roommates and is working full-time as a manager at a coffee shop. I feel no joy in her struggle, but I also feel no guilt. She is learning the lessons of independence that I inadvertently shielded her from for a decade. Perhaps one day she too will understand. I haven't responded to my mother's letter yet. I'm not sure when I will be ready. The wound is still healing. But her apology, her first small step towards accountability, was a seed. It's not a guarantee of a future relationship, but for the first time, it feels like a possibility. A different kind of relationship, one built not on obligation and transactions, but on a foundation of mutual respect. The terms will be mine, the timeline will be mine. Last week, my phone calendar pinged with a notification. Mom's birthday. For a moment, the old panic, the old sense of duty flared up. What should I do? What should I buy? Then I took a breath and looked around my quiet, peaceful home. I thought about my trip to Italy, about the therapy sessions, about the profound joy of reclaiming my own life. I picked up my phone and sent a text. Happy birthday, Mom. I hope you have a lovely day. And then I put my phone down and went about my day. It wasn't cold. It wasn't cruel. It was just right. It was a new beginning, my new beginning. To anyone watching who has felt like their worth is tied to what they can provide for others, please know this: your presence is the greatest present you can give. Don't ever let anyone, not even the people you love the most, make you feel like it's not enough. You are enough. Your time is valuable, your energy is precious, and your heart is not a commodity to be bought or sold. Sometimes, the most powerful act of love you can perform is to love yourself enough to walk away from a dynamic that is diminishing you. It's scary, but on the other side of that fear is freedom.